Hi and welcome to our very first artist trading card tutorial. So basically this is the size of an actual trading card. So it's by 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches. And with these you can either keep them yourself or you can trade them to other artists all over the world. So there's different trading card communities, and what you do is you trade your original artwork with somebody else's original artwork, and then what you can do is you can actually make a collection of original artwork in those plastic card wallets that you can get. So this is the first time I'm doing this with you all. So you can either get individual trading, cards, or what you can do is, this is like firm, like hard cardstock. But if you don't want to buy that, then what you can do is you can use just like standard sketchbook paper. Now, I've got a materials list, but what I'll do is I'll be going through with you the actual pencils that I've got in a moment. But what I've done is you can either transfer the line art onto your surface, or you can actually just draw on top of the line art, because generally the darker colours will be covered up anyway in the darker shades. And also you don't need to draw this, so you don't need to be like an artist who hand draws everything, although you can do if you want to. This is quick and easy. All you need to do is actually just add the colour to it. So I've chosen a limited palette of colours. I'm using polychromos pencils. You don't have to have them. You can use whatever pencils you've got. The purpose of this exercise is learning to sort of add the colour and to build up the layers. So this is kind of like a really sort of a cheap option of a tutorial. So what I've got is I've chosen the black for the body and the legs. I've got a warm grey 4, which I'm going to use as part of to deepen the black fur, and also warm the shadow side of the yellow bands and soften the black with the grey so it doesn't sit flat. I have a juniper green, so that's for the stem. Then there's the purple violet, and clearly that's for the darker petals. And to make the lighter petals, we've got the pink madder lake, bit of a strange name for a pencil. Then there's also the cold grey 3, so we're going to be using those, I think, for the wings. The white. Then we've got the burnt ochre. So what we're going to be doing is we're adding the shadow edges on the petals and the wings and warm reflected light back onto petal shadows. So this, and also deepen the stem shadow as well with these. And then we've got the dark cadmium yellow. So like I said, you don't actually have to have all of these as like the polychromos pencils. You will, in a standard set of pencils, you should have sort of colours similar to that. If you don't have those colours, I'm sure you'll probably have the Bumblebee colours, but for the flower itself, if you don't have those colours, then you can always choose your own colours. Sort of, you know, just make it yours if you know, your own style. Okay, so we're going to start with the base mapping. So we're going to be blocking in 3 big shapes. We're going to be blocking in the bee, the petals and the stem, and we're going to preserve every highlight and the white wing sheen, so we don't want to go over those. So for this we're going to be using the black, the purple violet and the juniper green. So you can use black, the nearest you've got for that, the purple violet, and the nearest you've got to that shade of green. So we're going to keep it loose and we're just mapping the values, but we're not committing to our final colour yet. So I'm just going to sharpen this ever so slightly, and my black's all sharpened. I'm going to sharpen the purple violet, but only a little bit. Don't want too much of a point on there at this stage. When we're doing layers, we only want we don't want a sharp point to the pencil, because we're just building up the layers. What we want, when we want the point, it's when we're actually adding the final detail on the top layer. Now, because this is quite a smooth surface, there's not much of a tooth of the paper to sort of grab a lot of the pigment, so it'll take a lot less layers. So you'll need to sort of press sort of reasonably light on there. So we'll go in with the black for the first of all. So we're just going to go lightly over the top like that. Just keep looking back at your reference photo. See, I have my reference photo on my iPad, and you can also see it in the corner of the screen there. But I have a reference photo on my iPad because I find that sort of easier, and you can also zoom in as well. So I'm just making that sort of these darker. You'll notice that if you've not been to one of my tutorials before, you'll notice that I sort of turn the pencil quite a bit, and that's because I'm trying to sort of get the sharper side of the pencil. I don't want it to sort of go too blunt. So there's a gap there, and that's because part of one of the petals is there, and we just come in over that part. I'm just going to sort of come in there. So just remember not too heavy with that pressure. We're not going to use the wing, go into the wings yet. And I'm just going in and just going in with the actual shape of how the fur of the body is going. If that makes sense. I'm going in the same direction rather than going against it, so that you can still see the shape of it. Usually I draw on a much bigger level, but this is really good if you haven't got a lot of time, but you want to get your pencils out and use a limited palette. Okay, so just go careful there because there's a highlighted bit there, so we're not going to go in and do that bit. There's a slight gap there. Okay, I'm just gonna go in. So it's a bit warm here, so my hands are sort of quite warm, and so it's sort of my arms are sticking to the mat that I'm leaning on. Okay, and so we're just going over only the darker bits because there is a lighter bit in there. Okay, and then so we've got the darker bit around here. And we've got another leg there. So rather than sort of colouring it, we're using short pencil strokes so that we can get our texture. And you can sort of see it slowly starting to sort of build up now anyway. Okay, so that's that part. So I'm going to go in with the juniper green, and we've got the stem there. See, it's very tempting on here on this to get out a whole selection of pencils and different shades of green, and you know, if I was doing a bigger picture then I would normally do that, but we don't need to do that for this one because it's a small one that we're doing, and we can use shade and shadow to sort of, and with our greys and that, to sort of build up depth to it. I'm just gonna sort of go in here and just in here. Just where I can sort of see any of the green. Oh, there's a bit up there and a bit sort of poking out there. And then we've got the purple violet. I actually am going to sharpen this one to quite a bit of a point. Okay, I use, if you've not seen my tutorials before, I use this Faber-Castell 3-hole pencil sharpener. So you've got the colour, you've got for oversized pencils, and that's for graphite. And I buy these all the time, so I've got quite a few of these in my art room at the moment, but they last quite a long time, and as soon as they go blunt I just get some more, but they're ever so good. Okay, so we're going to use the purple violet. I just want to see if I can zoom in again for you. Don't want to go out too out focus, but so that you can see it. Okay, so just going to go very lightly. And see how lightly I'm going. We just want to sort of get the idea of the colour there. And then I'm just mapping in the darker colours, the darker shades at the moment. Just coming in like that. got a darker area there. And if you notice, I'm holding it not right at the very point of it because I want more control, you know, looser control over it. I've sort of got my hand further up the pencil. I just want to come over that part again. So when you're sort of first doing it, if you're not used to using drawing with colour pencils, you usually find that that it gets to like a messy, ugly stage, and that's when you're sort of adding all the different layers in. But you need to add these layers in to sort of give it the texture and the depth that the picture deserves. Actually, let me just see if I can turn down the light on that because that is very bright. Okay, I think you can see that a bit better. What's actually the colour that you're actually seeing on the screen isn't actually what's showing in front, and that's because, you know, when we're sort of filming and that, it's not going to show you the exact same colour, so don't worry if yours isn't coming out exactly like mine. It's let me just sort that out a bit more. Yeah, if you don't worry if it's not coming out exactly the same. Hang on, let me just tip that out. Sorry about this. Everyone's is different, plus you might not have the same pencils as me anyway, but also it could be the fact that, you know, it's the screen that's coming out a different colour. Right, okay, so we've got, I'm just making sure we've got the darker areas in first. And then I'm just going to go very, very lightly like that. So when we're starting a drawing with colour pencils, and I think you probably would do it like with paints and that as well as you, and like other medium, is that you're always blocking the main colour, you know, the base layers first. Okay. So what you're going to find is once you've coloured it in, you're not going to see the line art at all. So you're not necessarily, I mean, if you can draw it, absolutely fine, but it's not, a lot of people when they're first starting out think, oh, I can't do that because I can't draw. Well, you don't need to be able to draw accurate drawings, because what you're actually learning is your colour theory and you're building up of textures, and you can always do the actual freehand drawing later on anyway, but it's always good, you know, to sort of start off this way. So I'm just sort of checking my reference photo, just double checking where the darker areas are going to be going. So So once I've sort of put those bits in, then I can carry on with the lighter areas, adding those colours in. So I'm just going to go very, very lightly with that. Like that. And because it's going to be lighter right near the top. And of course the actual bits underneath are always going, you know, underneath the flower and everything are going to be darker anyway. So yep, so we're just sort of, just bear with me. Yeah, so you've got the darker area, and then the light on the top you're going to have, it's going to be slightly lighter, so you'll get used to this the more that you actually use the colour pencils. But yeah, you don't have to be a, you know, a person that can actually draw. So I'm just having a look to see I'm making sure I'm going in the right area. Yeah, you don't need to be able to, you know, draw. The best thing to do is start off with line art, or you can use light boxes. There's apps as well that you can use. But there's also other techniques. But you know, if you sort of say like, oh, I can't even draw a stick person, you don't need to be able to draw anything like that. You just use the line art. You can always learn to draw later on, but it's just getting your values right. Right, that's going to be darker there. Okay, I'm just sort of lightly drawing in the outline of the flower as well. So that looks a bit better. Right, okay. So I'm just creating that outline. Just blocking in there. You don't want to go into the black if you can help it, because it'll make the lighter colours look dirty. And then we've got a little bit there. Okay, so just go careful that you don't actually go into the body of the bee. Because that's going to be where the yellow is, and it'll be difficult to sort of cover it up if we've got the purple in it as well. I'm just making sure. Right, okay, so we've got that little gap there. And so there's quite a few details actually on these petals. So that goes down there. So I'm just going to sort of make sure the outline's done first, and then we can move on to the adding the more colour to it. So the outline here is quite faint. And just go in like that. So this bit in the middle is actually going to be quite light anyway. It's going to have a lot of pink in it. Sometimes the earlier parts of the drawing take a bit longer because you're laying down your foundations. And it's important, you know, very important that you don't rush it, because getting those foundations right, you know, is what you're building on, and it needs to be absolutely perfect. Well, not perfect, but you know, it needs to be the best that you can get it before you sort of carry on, because if it's not right, then the other layers won't look right either. Right, so I need to make sure that's a bit darker. Right, so let's do that a bit lighter. When we're actually making something darker, we're not pressing heavily on there. What we're doing is we're actually still using the same light pressure, but we were just building up more pigment in that area. Okay, so we've got that part. So that's a darker area there. And so that's going to be darker than that bit there. And adding these, because we need to add contrast, we don't want it to sort of look flat. So just by adding the little bit of darkness there, lifts up the petals above it. We've got a darker bit in there. Darker bit there. Sometimes I find that I just jump from one area to the drawing to another. So I'm getting better at not doing that, but don't worry too much if that's what you find yourself doing. So we've got that bit needs a bit more darker pigment. Okay, so we've got that bit there. Because coming out of there is quite dark. If you feel you need to sharpen your pencil, then go ahead and do that. Right, so we've got a darker bit there. So again, because this bit's darker, I'm just lightly adding the pigment, and over and over on the same place. And we've got just a lighter area there. We will be adding more layers, but this is just to get the basis of it down. So if this is your first time doing a colour pencil tutorial, you'll be I expect you'll be quite surprised at how long it actually takes. And that's because with colour pencils you've got to add the layers to get the brightness out of it. Whereas if you're using paint or either the pastels, then just getting a darker area in there, they cover a wider surface, and so it's easier to sort of get it all down quicker. So it does take patience, but it really is worth it. So you can see that we're doing really well with this. Right, so we've got that. Right, if I do the outline, the outside ones first. So remember, on the darker parts, you're just going over it again in the same place, rather than just pressing heavily with the pencil. And you'll see that I've got my the card taped down on this surface, and that's so that it doesn't move about, and I can demonstrate to you without moving it around. Just going to go over these, I think they're called stamens. So we've got a bit there. And I'm just going to add a bit more on there. Okay, so we've got That's it, like that. And that one's quite light as well. Just going to make that bit slightly darker. Okay, and then we've got this bit here is darker. So again, I'm just going lightly backwards and forwards just to sort of build up those layers. And then I'm going to go in very lightly on top of that. So you can sort of see it's sort of just coming out already. Right, just going on where the bee is, so just go careful that you don't sort of drag the black of the, you know, the black pencil in. I think some of this is we're gonna be doing in pink anyway. And I'm just going to go into the centres here and just make sure they're coming out a bit darker as well. Remember, we're not sort of filling in the highlight areas, we're leaving those be. So we're just sort of going in between those central parts. So we're just sort of roughly sort of bringing them out. It's quite effective because where you're sort of just going in between, you know, those little highlighted areas, you're not having to do too much to it, and it really does sort of make it quite effective. So once we've got the foundation down, that's the slowest part sorted. So we just then add our sort of layers on top of that. What you could also do as well is, if you, with your reference photo on a tablet or your phone, you can also have a printed out copy of the reference photo, so you can sort of see it's very light around there with the odd occasional dark area coming in. So I'm just sort of hinting at that because you can't sort of see very much of the shape of those pink flowers anyway. So I'm just adding sort of like the hint of it coming through, and you can sort of see it's already become really effective there without actually adding much. Just very, very lightly with the pencil. So, you know, what we're doing here is basically just adding the darker parts of the petals. Okay, so I think that's okay for the first layer. Right, so that's all of our base mapping done. So now we're going to go in with our first colour layers, and we're going to be adding the yellow bands on the bee, build the petals to a solid mid-tone, and we're going to do the first sheer pass on the wings. So for this section we're going to be using the dark cadmium yellow, the purple violet again, and the cold grey 3. Okay, just a quick drink. Oh, that's better. All right, I'm going to sharpen my pencils. Okay, right, so we're going to build those yellow stripes, and what we're going to be doing, rather than colour it in, short pencil strokes like that. And that sort of comes through those wings because they're see-through, and it sort of comes in around there. So we're just still using that same light pressure, but we're just sort of building up our layers there. Okay, so that's that one. And then we've got this part here. So I want to make it as fluffy looking as possible. Remember to sort of try not to sort of drag the black in with the yellow. Okay, so it's very light at the moment, but we'll be adding more colour to that a bit later. So that's that, and then we'll go in with the Cold Grey 3, and oh, so I just need to zoom in on my, oh there we go. So we're just going to come in with the first pass on the wings. So what I want to do is just make sure I've got, just going to go over the outline with that slightly, and I don't want to lose any of those markings on the wings. Oh, sorry, I keep moving this around. Okay, so I'm just gonna very lightly go over those. Like that, and then back in with the purple violet, and we're just going to make those, oh, make those petals slightly darker in the, you know, like that. So we're just building up those mid-tones again. So this one is sort of quite dark in places. If you notice, I'm just doing a very light soft flick with the pencil. So we're sort of building this up quite darkly, but I don't know if you'll be able to sort of see it. Hang on. Oh, no, don't rip the card. Whether you can sort of see it better that way, so you can sort of see it's a bit darker. I have to remember this isn't actually card that I'm using. Right, okay, so we're just sort of building up lightly around here. And we've got that darker edge there. So we want to keep some of that light. So the mid-tones is where all of the darker area of the flower is. And because we know where the darker areas are, because we've already found that when we did our mapping just now, so this makes it a lot easier for us now. So it's quite darker down there. And then up under there. Just going to do a light layer over here. If I see some areas where that I think I've missed, then I'll add those as I'm going along as well, but pretty much got most of them in anyway. Again, very, very light, so you'll be able to see how light it is. I'm just going like that, so you can't actually sort of see a dent on the back of my hand, but if I was doing a harder pressure, you'd be able to see it. So it's very, very light. Okay, so we've got it's always darker towards the middle of the flower because that's the least amount of light. And we've got quite a darker area coming out. Like that. Just adding a light layer there. And again, we're just going to keep building up on that part there because that is quite dark. Okay. So we have to sort of make sure we've got our tonal values in because we don't want this to look flat. See, this is all one colour that we're using. But because we've got darks and lights, it's actually making it more three-dimensional. Because you don't want it all to be the same sort of lightness or darkness. And just do that one there. Slightly darker under there as well. Okay, and then just carry on around here, and then we'll move on around there. So actually, so we just finish this bit here. So I've just done a very light line there, and I'm just adding some extra shading in. Because then it sort of gives that petal like a ripple effect. So you can actually choose a picture and then draw it all the same colour, but you can actually use different sort of depths of colour, like we've been doing here. So I've known somebody, a fellow artist, who's actually drawn a whole picture in Venetian red, and it looked incredible. So effective. Right, okay, so we've got a darker bit there as well. So we don't want to make a harsh line, we just want to make it sort of shaded, and that gives you the impression that it's sort of dipped a bit. So it's kind of like comes down like that and up like that. It's very easy to do. It's just sort of like lightly going over everything with your pencil. I'm just gonna go over these a bit more. Not too much, because we don't want those too dark. Just going over those stamen again. Okay. Right, so we are just going over this one. So I'm doing all this in one go for you, but you don't have to do it all in one go. The good thing about this is you've got permanent access to this tutorial, so you can always go back to it anytime you want. That bit in there as well. And then just go careful you don't go in to the yellow that we added just now. So we're just adding a bit more depth to this bit around here. And then we got in there as well. So these are also really good, these little artist trading cards. If you don't want to sort of trade them with anyone, you can also just either keep them for yourself, or you can gift them to people. So like, I don't know, if it's like their birthday or something, you want to make them, rather than sort of buying them something, you want to sort of, you could make a range of a range of these sort of cards, and you can just gift them to them, and it's unique and it's original artwork. So like, I've got two sisters and they're really into their wildlife. So there's like plenty that I could, or you know, nature and that, there's plenty of things that I could draw and like gift to them. So yeah, it's a really lovely original sort of piece of like of yourself that you're given to them. I mean, what you could do is you could sort of frame them as well. And just this little bit. And then we've got a lighter bit around there. Okay, let me just double check this bit up here. In there. Okay, so that's stage 2 done. So stage 3 is all about form and development. So for this one, we're going to deepen the black fur, we're going to warm the shadow side of the yellow bands, and we're going to soften the black with grey so that it doesn't sit flat. So for this section, we're going to be using black, then we're going to be using burnt ochre, and then we're going to be using the warm grey 4. Okay, so quick drink. Okay, so if we start off with the warm grey 4, so the warm grey 4 just goes over the black, not instead of it, so it stops the fur from reading as a flat silhouette. So what we're going to do is just sort of just adds a bit of texture to it. So if you can't see it, it doesn't matter too much. We're just sort of going over. And you can see at this stage, it doesn't look like the original line drawing. So we're just lightly going over that. And then we want to sort of just bring that out a bit. And we've also going to use that bit there as well. Okay, so just want to come in and deepen this area with the black. I'm actually going to make it a bit sharper. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm using fine sort of movements there and just sort of taking it slightly into the yellow. And you can sort of see that it's darker. And we've got just making sure I've got the right part. So we've got that. Oh, yeah. and then at the top of here it's slightly darker. So I always like to pay sort of really close attention to the reference photo so that I can get it as close as possible. So I'm making those darks a lot darker. So it's got some bits coming off of its leg. So when you sort of begin to sort of add your layers, it makes it look much more vibrant. So under the wing, it's a lot darker. But we don't want it to do it all completely dark, because you can see there's like different shades. Okay, and so that's that, and then I'm going to use the burnt ochre to warm the shadow side of the yellow bands. So just sharpen that a moment, because just under here we just want to sort of go in so you can still see it's yellow, but it's got a warmth to it. I'm just going to add a bit more colour to this. Not all the way through, just some of it so that it looks it sort of brings it out a bit. And you can sort of see that it's standing out. Okay, so we're on part 4 now. So this is all about texture development. So tapered first strokes following growth direction, petal veins and soft ridges, green accents on the stem. So we're going to be using black, purple violet, pink madder lake and juniper green. So let's just go in and look at that bee once again, just to make sure it's darker where it's supposed to be. And we don't, we want to make sure that it's got that texture. That needs building up. Actually, we didn't do that just now. And then we've got that comes out like that. Okay, and I'm just sort of building up those layers. that the top there as well. And then I just want to sort of bring that down there. Okay, let's do the John's called it a Jupiter green then, juniper green. So again, we're going to lightly build that up. Just along down there. So I'm not pressing firmly with this, I'm just building it up. And so the bit that's in the middle is the darkest part. And then it sort of starts going towards the left hand side. And slightly darker on there. We also want that petal to stand out a bit. Like that. And then we're just going to come in with, again, just building these areas up. So it's darker underneath. And in there. Like that. Okay, so we are just going to sharpen the pink. Right. So I'm going to first of all go in with the pink Madder Lake on here, just to sort of show the different sort of colours. Also going to start going in the middle part as well in a moment. Just adding sort of different colours. Well, not different colours, but part of the same family group of colours, but so that it's sort of got a different sort of depth to it. Okay, so I'm just going to go in there. Right. Just going to go very, very lightly with this. what I'll do is, if it starts to look flat, then what we'll do is we'll go in with the purple violet and just make the darks a bit darker again. So some of it is very, very light, so we're not going to sort of see all of it, but I just want to sort of make sure we get that hint of pink in. So we've got a few of like the stamen and the veins going in there anyway. Okay, so I'm just going to use the purple violet, and I'm just going to just make sure the centres of those are as dark as they can be. I'm not sort of particularly going in and creating individual petals here. I just want it to sort of, you know, look like it's you know, that it's got that sort of shape to it. So if I just come in with the pink again. Because it's quite a bright pink, I don't want to sort of go in too hard with it. This is all about balancing up, you know, your shade and your colours. So I'm just going to bring these colours into it a bit. And just referring back to my reference photo. And I'm just hinting at the shapes. So it's just like spending a bit of time just balancing it up a bit. Just going to use the pink on that a bit. And a bit of the pink again. I'm just going to blend in with this purple violet again. So I want to bring that down. So I'm just making this area pink, but then coming in a bit more with the purple violet around it. And never actually did that bit there either. Okay, so we want that there to be a bit darker. Just coming into there a bit. Okay, and then that's the just adding the stamen edges on there. Okay, just a bit more on there. See, the thing is with art is that you can keep spending loads of time on it and then, you know, find that you've overworked it, so it's always knowing when to stop. Okay, right, so I'm happy with that. So we're going to be going on to the cool shadow edges on the petals and the wings, the warm reflected light back onto into the petal shadows and deepen the stem shadow. So we're going to be using the Cold Grey 3, the Pink Madder Lake and the Burnt Ochre. So we're going to be going medium to firm in this area. So this is the stage that sells the realism, so don't skip it even when, you know, you think that you're coming to the end. So I'm just going to sort of come in and add a little bit more there. A little bit more in there. Just want to add a little bit. Get it out of the way onto those wings. Like that. Just going to sort of, with the Pink Madder Lake, just sort of bring out that pink a bit more. Now because this is a bright pink, we're just going to just, you know, go very lightly with it. I'm going to come in with that purple violet again and just just deepen some of those shadows a bit more. Just another final pass of this. So with this you can press a bit firmer, but don't sort of make it look out of character for the rest of the flower. So just coming in like that. This just gives it more form, like that. And like I said, you can just sort of keep, going forever with this. And the thing with these is that, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just need to be enjoying what you're doing. And of course at the same time you're learning different techniques anyway. So I'm just sort of bringing this out a bit more, and then just come out with some more of that pink. So we don't want to overwork it. Sometimes less is more. Okay. Just going to bring that forward a bit more. Okay, right, so So now we want the white fur highlights, the wing sheen the wing sheen streaks, petal highlight edges, and a few crisp black accents. So just black and white on this one. This is the final stage. So it's going to, I'm actually going to sort of fill that in slightly, not all of it. And then just sort of come in with that. And then we've got a lighter part there. Just darken some of this up. Just go over the wing slightly. And because we left out these highlighted parts, we don't really need to add those as white. Just gonna go over that a bit. Okay, so I think we will call that done. So let's very carefully take off the tape. I've got to go very careful here because I don't want to rip. There we go. So that's what it's looking like. So all that needs to do is on the back we sign our name, the date, so we can just put for July 26, and we can just put the titles Bumblebee. For me, I'm going to put Bumblebee on flower. And there we go, all done. So you can kind of like see the depth of it by holding it at the angle, but it looks sort of quite light on there, but it does have a lot of depth to it. So I hope you've enjoyed doing this with me. As you can see, it's a small scale, just takes about an hour and a half to do. If you would like to do more, I will be doing them running workshops once a month. This is a freebie as it's the first one, and if you want to do more of these, in a couple of weeks I'll be doing a live draw along in the Pencil Pools Academy, doing it as a live draw along, and these will be free as part of the membership. So I will put a link to the membership. It's currently $9.99 a month, and yeah, so if you would like to do more of these, it'd be great to have you in the academy. So thank you very much for drawing along with me today.